On a quiet highway outside Santa Barbara, California, the late afternoon sun reflected off the ocean in the distance. A sleek luxury sedan stood helplessly on the shoulder of the road, hazard lights blinking steadily. Inside, a confident female CEO sat gripping the steering wheel, frustration slowly cracking her composed exterior. She had tried everything, turning the ignition again and again, checking alerts on the dashboard, even stepping outside to look beneath the hood despite her tailored heels. Nothing worked. For someone used to commanding boardrooms and billion-dollar deals, being stranded felt humiliating, almost unreal. Cars sped past without slowing. Some drivers glanced briefly, others didn't look at all. The CEO crossed her arms, staring at the road ahead. She had meetings waiting, calls unanswered, responsibilities stacked high. Yet here she was, powerless on the side of the highway, the wind tugging at her hair. Her phone buzzed with notifications, but no service bar appeared. The irony stung. She owned companies across states, flew private when needed, yet couldn't move a single mile forward. She exhaled sharply, leaning against the car, eyes fixed on the horizon as irritation turned into uneasy silence. A few minutes later, an old pickup truck slowed behind her. The engine rattled softly as it pulled over. The truck's paint was faded, its sides marked with years of work and wear. The driver's door opened slowly, and a man stepped out. He was in his mid-30s, wearing a simple work shirt with oil stains on the sleeves. His boots were scuffed, his posture tired but steady. He glanced toward the luxury sedan, then toward the traffic, assessing the situation with quiet experience. Inside his truck, a young boy sat buckled in, watching curiously through the windshield. The man turned back briefly, giving a reassuring nod before closing the door. He walked toward the stranded car with calm, unhurried steps. The CEO noticed him approaching and straightened instinctively. She was used to being helped by professionals, SFers, assistants, engineers. This man didn't look like any of them. Still, there was something steady in his presence, something that didn't demand attention, yet commanded it. "Car trouble?" he asked gently, keeping a respectful distance. She nodded, her voice measured. "It just died. No warning. I've tried everything." He crouched near the front of the sedan, listening as she turned the key once more. The engine clicked weakly and fell silent again. He frowned slightly, not in judgment, but concentration. "I can take a look, if you want," he said. "I'm a mechanic." Was heading home anyway. She hesitated for half a second. Pride tugged at her, but the situation left little choice. "Please," she said quietly. As he lifted the hood, the late sunlight illuminated his face, and suddenly, time shifted. The CEO froze, the angle of his jaw, the familiar crease near his brow when he focused. Even the way he tilted his head while listening to the engine. Her breath, caught as a memory, long buried under years of ambition and success, surged forward without warning. "No," she whispered under her breath. The man paused, glancing up. "Did you say something?" She shook her head quickly, heart racing. "No, go ahead." He returned to the engine, unaware of the storm unfolding behind her eyes. She studied him carefully now, details clicking into place. Older, yes, worn by responsibility, but undeniably him. Her first love, years ago, before venture capital meetings and press interviews, before single parenthood and separate lives, they had stood on a very different road together, young, hopeful, and certain that love would conquer everything. She had chosen ambition. He had chosen responsibility. Neither had chosen each other. The boy in the truck leaned forward. Curious, the CEO noticed him for the first time and felt an unexpected ache. She wondered, without asking, who his mother was. Whether life had been kind to him, whether he had found happiness after she walked away. The mechanic wiped his hands and leaned closer to the engine, adjusting a cable. "Battery's fine. Fuel line too," he muttered, more to himself than her. She folded her arms tightly, trying to steady her breathing. The highway noise faded as memories grew louder. Late-night conversations, laughter in small apartments, promises whispered under unfinished stars. She had left without looking back. He hadn't followed. Now, fate had placed them inches apart, bound not by emotion, but by a broken car. He stepped back slightly. "Mind trying the ignition again?" She nodded, swallowing hard, and turned the key. The engine sputtered but didn't start. He frowned thoughtfully. "Close," he said. "There's something familiar about this setup." She almost laughed at the word familiar. As he worked, she studied his hands, strong, steady, carrying years of labor. These were the same hands that once held hers when she doubted herself. The same hands she had released when success called louder than love. He finally straightened, wiping his forehead. "Give me a few more minutes. I won't leave you stranded." She looked at him fully now, meeting his eyes. And this time, he recognized her. His expression shifted, confusion first, then surprise, then something deeper he couldn't name. The world seemed to pause between them, suspended by unfinished history and the hum of passing traffic. "Is it really you?" he asked quietly. She nodded, voice barely steady. "Hi." In that moment, the broken car became irrelevant. Two lives, once intertwined, now stood face to face on a quiet California highway, older, changed, and suddenly forced to confront everything they had left unsaid. Fate hadn't just stalled her engine, it had brought her back to the one person she never truly forgot. The man leaned deeper into the open hood, his movements confident and unhurried. Years of experience guided his hands as he traced wires and hoses, listening more than looking. Nearby, his young son sat on the edge of the pickup truck's seat, legs swinging, watching his father with quiet admiration. The CEO stood a few steps back, arms folded tightly, her eyes fixed on him. The sound of his voice, low, steady, familiar, echoed in her chest. She hadn't heard it in years, yet it felt impossibly close, like a song she once knew every word to but had never sung again. He spoke softly to himself as he worked, murmuring observations about the engine's response. Each word confirmed what her heart already knew. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't just memory playing tricks. This was him, the man she had loved, before ambition rewrote her life. She took a slow breath, grounding herself. He hadn't looked at her again. Not fully. She wondered if he was avoiding it on purpose, or if he was giving her space. Either way, the silence between them grew heavy, crowded with everything they had never said. Years ago, they had been inseparable, young, certain. She remembered the tiny apartment they shared near the coast, the cheap furniture, the shared dreams. He fixed engines by day. She worked late nights, sketching business ideas on scraps of paper, convinced the world was waiting. She had wanted more success, more impact, more proof that she mattered. He had wanted stability, a family, roots that didn't shift with every new opportunity. Neither dream was wrong. They were just different. When her first major offer came, she had taken it without hesitation. Promises were made, phone calls planned, visits postponed. Slowly, love turned into distance. Then distance became silence. One day, she had packed her things and left before he came home. He hadn't chased her. That had hurt more than she ever admitted. Now, watching him work, she saw the man he had become. Stronger, calmer, grounded. The lines on his face told stories of responsibility and sacrifice. She wondered if he had ever regretted letting her go, if he had learned to live without that question. His son slid down from the truck and walked closer, curiosity overcoming patience. The boy stood beside his father, peering into the engine with wide eyes. "Is it bad?" the boy asked. The man smiled faintly. "Nothing we can't handle." The CEO's chest tightened. That smile, she remembered it. The way it softened his seriousness. The way it used to be meant just for her. She cleared her throat quietly. "He's your son." The man paused for the first time. Slowly, he straightened and glanced at the boy, then back at her. "Yeah," he said, "my whole world." There was no bitterness in his voice, no accusation, just truth. She nodded, forcing a small smile. "He's wonderful." The boy beamed, sensing the warmth in her tone. He waved shyly. She waved back, surprised by the sudden emotion pressing behind her eyes. For years, she had told herself she didn't want this life. And yet, standing there, she felt the weight of what might have been. The man returned to the engine, breaking the moment. "Looks like a sensor issue mixed with a loose connection," he said calmly. "I've seen it before. Just takes patience." Patience. Another thing she hadn't had back then. She watched him work in silence, every movement triggering memories. Late nights when he came home exhausted but still listened to her ideas. The way he believed in her before anyone else did. The way she had believed love would wait while she chased success. She finally spoke, her voice softer than she intended. "I didn't expect to see you again." He didn't look up. Life's full of surprises. Traffic continued to pass, oblivious to the emotional reckoning unfolding on the roadside. The engine remained silent, but something else was stirring in finished business. Unresolved feelings. And a fragile curiosity about what time had changed and what it hadn't. The boy tugged lightly at his father's sleeve. "Are we going to be late?" The man nodded gently. "A little, but it's okay." The CEO felt a strange mix of guilt and gratitude. He was staying for her, not because of who she was now, but because of who he had always been. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "I'm glad it was you who stopped." He finally looked at her then, really looked at her then, really looked. His eyes held surprise. Yes, but also acceptance. "Me too," he said quietly. For a moment, neither spoke. The air between them felt fragile, as if one wrong word could shatter it. Yet beneath the silence there was understanding, two people shaped by choices, standing where paths crossed again. He reached into his toolbox and tightened one last connection. "Try it now," he said. She nodded, slipping back into the driver's seat. Her hands trembled slightly as she turned the key. The engine coughed but didn't start. She exhaled, disappointment flickering across her face. He didn't seem discouraged. Instead, he smiled faintly, reassuring. "Almost," he said. "Give me one more minute." As he leaned in again, she watched him with a new awareness. This wasn't just about fixing a car. It was about confronting the past, about seeing whether the people they had become could stand beside each other without regret. The engine stayed quiet, but the road ahead emotionally, undeniably, was beginning to open. The mechanic tightened the final connection and stepped back, studying the engine as if listening to a familiar voice. "Try it now," he said calmly, wiping his hands on a worn cloth. There was no tension in his tone, only quiet confidence built from years of understanding machines and people. The CEO slid into the driver's seat once more. Her heart thudded louder than the passing traffic as she placed her hands on the steering wheel. She paused for half a second, then turned the key. The engine came alive smoothly, its low hum steady and strong. Relief rushed through the air like a held breath finally released. The boy cheered softly, clapping his hands. The mechanic smiled instinctively, the kind of smile that came not from pride, but satisfaction. Another problem solved. Another person no longer stranded. The CEO stepped out slowly, her composed exterior cracking at the edges. She stared at the running car, then at the man beside it. For a moment, words failed her. Years of rehearsed confidence dissolved, replaced by something raw and unguarded. "I never stopped thinking about you," she said quietly. The words hung between them, heavier than the silence before the engine started. She hadn't planned to say it. It simply escaped truth surfacing after years of restraint. Her eyes searched his face, bracing for rejection, indifference, anything. He didn't look surprised. Instead, he smiled softly, a mix of understanding and acceptance in his eyes. "I figured," he said gently, "some things don't just disappear." She swallowed hard. "I was young. I thought success would fix everything. I thought love would wait." He nodded slowly. "I know." For a moment, neither spoke. The highway noise faded into the background as memories filled the space between them. Shared laughter, late-night conversations, dreams spoken too early, and choices made too fast. "My life took a different path," he continued, his voice steady. "Not worse, just different. I became a father. Responsibility became my priority. I learned how to be strong quietly, without needing applause." She glanced toward his son, who was now crouched near the truck, pretending to inspect an imaginary engine. There was pride in the way the boy mirrored his father's movements. She felt something twist gently in her chest. "You're a good man," she said. "You always were." He shrugged lightly. "I just did what needed to be done." She laughed softly, tears threatening. "You always said that." The familiarity startled them both. It reminded her how deeply she had known him, how deeply she still did. Success had given her influence, power, recognition. But standing there, she felt small in a way that wasn't humiliating, just honest. "I wondered sometimes," she admitted, "what life would have been like if I stayed." He looked at her for a long moment before answering. "I wondered too, but wondering doesn't build a future. Living does." There was no bitterness in his words, only truth. She nodded, absorbing it. For years, she had measured life by milestones, promotions, profits, headlines. He had measured it by bedtime stories, scraped knees, and steady routines. Two lives shaped by different values, neither wrong. "I'm glad you found peace," she said quietly. He smiled again, this time warmer. "I'm glad you found what you were looking for." She hesitated. "I did, mostly." He understood what she didn't say. Success had filled her calendar, not her evenings. Achievements had replaced companionship. Standing there, she realized how much she had traded for momentum. The boy approached them again, tugging at his father's hand. "Can we go now?" He nodded. "Yeah, buddy." Almost. The CEO knelt slightly to meet the boy's eyes. "Thank you for sharing your dad with me today." The boy grinned. "He's good at fixing things." She smiled. "Yes, he really is." She stood and reached into her car, pulling out her phone and a business card. She held it out gently. "If you ever need anything at all." He looked at the card, then back at her. "I appreciate that." He didn't promise to call. He didn't refuse it either. It was enough. They stood there for another moment, the engine humming softly behind them. The past finally acknowledged instead of avoided. There was no dramatic reunion, no promises rewritten, just clarity. "I'm glad it was you who stopped," she said again. He nodded. "Me too." She climbed back into her car, pausing before closing the door. "Take care," she said, "both of you." He watched as she drove away, the sedan merging smoothly back into traffic. His son waved until the car disappeared from sight. As he returned to his truck, he felt lighter, not because something had begun, but because something had finally settled. Some chapters didn't need rewriting. They just needed understanding. Behind him, the road stretched forward steady, familiar, honest, and for the first time in years, the past no longer felt unfinished. They remained standing there longer than necessary, neither in a hurry to leave. The sun dipped lower, painting the California sky in soft shades of gold and amber. The highway noise softened, as if the world itself was giving them a moment to breathe. Remember, and finally speak without fear. She leaned lightly against her car, no longer the unshakable CEO the world saw on magazine covers. Here, she was simply a woman revisiting a part of herself she had buried beneath ambition. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Not just for the car." He understood immediately. He rested his hands on his hips, posture relaxed. "You're welcome," he replied. "For all of it." She smiled, eyes glistening. "Seeing you today reminded me who I was before everything became about winning. I used to dream without calculating the cost. I forgot that version of myself existed." He nodded slowly. "You didn't lose her. You just took a longer road. The boy sat on the tailgate of the truck, swinging his legs, humming softly to himself. The sight grounded them both in the present. Whatever they had been, whatever they could have been, life had unfolded with its own logic, sometimes kind, sometimes unforgiving, always forward. I used to think success would quiet the emptiness, she admitted. It didn't. It just made it quieter, not smaller. He listened without interrupting, the way he always had. And I used to think staying was enough. He said that love alone would solve everything. It doesn't. It needs timing and readiness. They shared a small, understanding laugh. No accusations lingered between them anymore, just acceptance. She glanced at his son again, watching the boy trace shapes in the dust with a stick. He's lucky, she said softly. He smiled with unmistakable pride. I'm the lucky one. She believed him. For the first time, she saw that fulfillment didn't always wear the shape she had chased. Sometimes it looked like constancy, like presence, like choosing one person every day and standing by that choice. The sun continued its descent, shadows stretching across the road. She straightened, sensing the moment drawing to a close. I won't pretend today didn't stir things, she said, honestly, but I don't want to reopen wounds that have healed. He appreciated her words. Some memories don't need reopening, he replied. They just need honoring. She reached out, hesitated, then gently squeezed his hand. The touch was brief but meaningful, no longer fueled by longing, but gratitude. I'm really glad you're happy, she said. He met her gaze. I am, and I'm glad you found your way too. They stood in silence for a few seconds more, letting the truth settle. There was no dramatic promise, no rekindled romance written into the sky. Just two people acknowledging a love that had shaped them and releasing it with respect. She stepped back toward her car, opening the door. Before getting in, she turned once more. If our paths cross again, she said lightly, I hope it's under calmer circumstances. He smiled. Life has a funny way of deciding that. The boy hopped down from the truck and waved enthusiastically. Bye. She waved back, laughing softly. Bye, she said, her voice warm. She slid into the driver's seat and closed the door. As she pulled onto the road, she glanced in the rearview mirror. The pickup truck remained on the shoulder, a quiet silhouette against the glowing horizon. Then it disappeared from view. The road ahead was clear. As she drove, something inside her felt lighter, not because she had regained something lost, but because she had made peace with it. The past no longer felt like a question mark. It felt like a chapter with a proper ending. Behind her, the single father climbed into his truck. His son buckled in, already talking excitedly about dinner. He listened with a smile, heart steady. Seeing her again had stirred old emotions. Yes, but it had also reaffirmed the life he had built. He started the engine and pulled back onto the road, heading home. The sun finally slipped beneath the horizon, leaving behind a calm twilight. Two cars traveled in opposite directions, carrying two people forever connected by a shared past but no longer defined by it. Some loves don't end in togetherness. Some end in understanding. And sometimes, that is the truest kind of closure.